Common Sense America with Eden Cornell. Yeah.
And good morning, Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. It's so great to be back with you this beautiful Tuesday morning, May the 23rd. We are here in Eastern North Carolina. We are on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Rumble. And also hop over to my website, EdenGordonMedia.com. You can check out all the fantastic interviews we have been featuring in the month of May. Everything from military appreciation, everything from education and our veterans, and what is ahead for our nation with its defense, and what is happening in the political waters. You saw yesterday, Tim Scott announced he's running for president of the United States, and who isn't running for president of the United States in this day and time? I tell you what. But I was listening to all of my favorite radio shows yesterday. I was listening to Greg Kelly on WABC New York in the afternoon. He was talking about it. I listened to Chris DeGaulle this morning at 9 a.m. Philadelphia, and he was talking about it. And they both had a little bit of different perspectives. And I was sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, okay, we have yet another great American running from the great state of South Carolina. I'm sitting here tapping my fingers and just waiting for... I have so many thoughts right now, and I'm not stumped for words. I'm just trying to figure out how to best bring it across to this family show that's focused on God, country, and family. I love this great country, and I love the fact that so many people are willing to fight for it. And I love the fact that you, the audience, the American people, are turning over rocks and awakening those who are just wanting to hide their heads in the sand. So thank you for doing that. Between Tim Scott and Nikki Haley, I'm going to cite Greg Kelly's commentary, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but I admire Greg for his faith because he has really been bold in his faith. And he's also very bold in his commentary, both at Newsmax and WABC. But Greg said something to Nikki Haley, and then he also said something to Tim Scott. And I couldn't agree with him more. And having served in a presidential administration, having served on the campaign trail, having served 20 years on Capitol Hill and working in a communications space, I agree with him, and I have merit that I can bring to the table that really zeroes in on what I'm seeing in this landscape. And you guys know I love my kitchen table discussions. And you guys know my husband and I moved into a new house. And you guys know that there is no dining room built within this house. No, the builders just left it out. So we gather on the back porch that's covered, and that is our kitchen table discussions. Yesterday, dear friend came over, and we had a kitchen table discussion about everything that's happening in this nation. She spends half her time in Florida, half her time here in North Carolina. Very involved with the ladies' GOP, very involved in caring about this nation, caring about our veterans, and caring for the sick. She has a great perspective on what she's seeing and what is happening in the course of this nation as we are in a presidential momentum of enough of Biden and what is next for this nation. Is it Trump again? Is it DeSantis? Is it Trump and DeSantis? Is it Trump and Tim Scott? Is it Trump and somebody else? Are you worn out yet? I think a lot of people are. But the two things, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not from the South. I'm from Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. I got an attitude. I'm a Northern girl in a Southern world. And don't you know it, they just love me here. But I sit here and say, Tim Scott, Greg Kelly said this. Looked like he was opening and launching a business yesterday. Car dealership? Perhaps, maybe. And then Nikki Haley, Greg Kelly said, she's running for PTA? Those were my sentiments exactly. And I did my show before I heard Greg Kelly do his show. So I'm not pulling from it, but I am citing because he's backing me up here, even though he doesn't realize it. When I first listened to Nikki Haley's, I'm thinking, I know you're a woman. I know you have an Indian background. But come on, lady, talk about what you did for this nation and in the great state of South Carolina. Let's talk about that. Those are more important to me right now. And when I hear your interviews, they're phenomenal. But let's talk about what you did and what you can accomplish for this great country of ours. You're a veteran spouse. You were an Army spouse. I'm a veteran spouse. I know exactly what you go through when it comes to being a veteran spouse, even more so than most of them. And then Tim Scott. I didn't know this morning, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts on this. And you guys, send me your comments. I've been sitting here reading text messages from different people who listen to the show. You may not post it publicly, but that's fine. Just send me your comments, and I appreciate your thoughts. I didn't know this until this morning because Chris DeGaulle, I'm citing his show, 990 AM in Philadelphia, mentioned this. I didn't know Tim Scott wasn't married and didn't have a family. Okay. What's that have to do with him running for president? I ran for state house. Yeah, it's a small seat in North Carolina, but I don't have any kids. No one ever brought that up. My husband and I mentor, because that's very important to us, but I couldn't have kids. Plain and simple. Being bold and blunt about it. So, speaking of kids, speaking of being mothers and fathers and guardians and caregivers and et cetera, I have this brand new guest coming over to us this morning. She's from Philadelphia. Go Philadelphia Phillies. She is a Young Voices contributor. She talks a lot about culture, religion, politics, and I love her perspective. And she wrote an article about Mother's Day. Yeah, I got it, you guys. I know it's not Mother's Day. But she talked a lot about the tradition of Mother's Day, how it was founded, and bringing back those traditions that I think are very important to us that have been pushed aside by the other culture wars of the woke cultation, libtardation of what's happening in Washington. And I really like her perspective on things. So she's brand new to me, brand new to you, and love Young Voices. They're here at least once or twice a week. And I'm impressed with what they bring to the table, but I'm impressed to talk with her. She's a mama. And so even though I'm not a mother, we still can talk about Mother's Day because I said this about my mother, every day is Mother's Day. For so many of you out there, every day is Father's Day for so many of you out there. Every day is Guardian's Day, Grandparents' Day, because our culture has shifted so much and what the family looks like now. So many people are now taking care of other people's kids. So they need to be recognized too. So Elizabeth Grace Matthew, love her name. She's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I'm going to bring her over to the show right now. Good morning, Elizabeth. How are you?
Good morning, Eden. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. It's such an honor to meet you. And I think very highly of Young Voices. How long have you been with Young Voices?
Since January. So this is my first stint with them. It's been such a great experience.
Oh, well, wonderful, wonderful. It's so nice to have you here. And I assume you're coming from Philadelphia?
I am, yes. Is that where you're from as well?
I grew up in Chester County. So not Chester County. So
nearby.
Yeah. So between the New York Yankees and the Philadelphia Phillies, I really didn't have a choice in life. But it's so great to have you here. Can you share with our audience, since you are a new Young Voices contributor to this audience, share a little bit about your background? I mean, I won't do it justice. You have such a phenomenal background. Can you share a little bit with what you have been doing and what you're doing now?
Sure. Thank you. So my background's in higher education. I taught writing as well as leadership theory and communication and literature in the academy for a little over a decade. Mm-hmm. I have a master's in English literature and a doctorate in higher education. Mm. So, that's where I really spent my early career. And this past year, I left higher ed to pursue writing full time. So I've been doing that since this past August. Mm-hmm. And it's been a great adventure. And, I've gotten to do so many cool things. I write about religion, politics, mm-hmm. Education, which of course is, where I have some expertise in terms of my background. Yeah. And Young Voices has been such a great help in finding awesome places to publish and folks like yourself to speak with. So it's just been an awesome experience so far. I have 3 little boys, and I live in the Philly area with them. Yeah. And my husband as well. Mm-hmm.
I figured your husband was in the background because
Yes.
I was reading a little bit about him as well. Can I ask you, I know this isn't really a part of the interview that we talked about, but I'm curious, did you choose to leave higher education because of what's happening? Or was it just because you were ready to move on to your next step of your career journey, if you will?
That's a great question. Not really, no. I actually chose to leave mostly because I had never been able to kind of do the intellectual work that I wanted to do in terms of writing and whatnot. I never got on the tenure track because I really kind of foregrounded family, and I didn't want to have to move all over the country or take whatever job was offered. And so we really prioritized, my husband's career in terms of him doing what he could to make sure that I had the ability to be flexible with our children. So while I did work full time, I also had a great deal of flexibility in my on-campus roles. But once our youngest got to be about 3 and my husband had made partner, we were in a position where, my youngest got to be about 1 and my husband had made partner. We were in a position where I was able to step back from the, schedule that was set by a department or whatnot, and stop supervising classes or teaching. Grading's the big thing when you teach writing, and start pursuing some of what I really wanted to do in terms of my own writing.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I have a lot of people here on the show really talking about the education factors, whether it's elementary ed to last week, I had Drexel University professor on talking about curriculum versus co-curriculum. And so education is very important to me on so many different levels. From the trade aspect to the undergrad aspect to what's ahead for our college graduates now, what's on their plates, what do they do now, and even the high school graduates, just that whole transformation of our culture. So let's talk culture. When I worked for Senator Santorum from the great state of Pennsylvania, who wears suits, not like Fetterman, I'm going to put that one in there. I had the honor of serving on his conference committee. And we were very much focused on culture, faith in the public square, lifting the good, the true, and the beautiful. And this was back in early 2000s. And in that time period, it made an impact on my personal journey, but also on my professional journey. So let's talk about the culture. Let's talk about what you have been writing. You wrote about Mother's Day. You wrote about the special tree in Brooklyn, which I absolutely love because I'm all about featuring books here. You're talking about school choice. There's so many different, I call them culture wars. I think we see a lot of things we are constantly combating on a day-to-day basis. What are we going to face when we wake up in the morning? So let's do the easy piece first. Let's talk about the Mother's Day feature that you talked about. Let's talk about bringing back Mother's Day. You talked about it in The Hill. Let's talk about, I'm not a mother, and you heard me talk about that. I'm not a mom, but I get to love on a bunch of kids. And has Mother's Day, let's ask this, has Mother's Day really been, as you quote said, more commercialized than ever? The Hallmark holiday, if you will, where it has completely lost the focus on what Mother's Day really intended it to be, and because of the culture issues.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's some of it. I think a lot of the issue around Mother's Day is that it's really a privatized holiday. We treat it a lot like Valentine's Day. So the impetus for my article was sort of these companies sending these emails, do you want to opt out of Mother's Day text messages, Mother's Day reminders, et cetera. And I'm in no way opposed to people doing that. If you just lost your mom, do you want to get emails from Target saying,
no way.
Right. No. And I understand that. Who wants that emotional, weight on them just when they're opening their phone to check a text message? So I'm not in any way opposed to that. But I think it's sort of sad that Mother's Day has become a thing that's so privatized that that's how you'd feel about it.
Yeah.
So the original purpose of Mother's Day was actually founded by a woman who herself did not have children. And she was founding it to honor her late mother. So it was her mother had already passed and she didn't have children. So in today's sort of understanding, she would be exactly the type of person that would want to block those text messages.
Right.
But instead, she founded Mother's Day because she really saw it as a national celebration of, the nurture the care and the civic education that mothers provide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was founded in our native Philadelphia.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, John Wanamaker helped her.
Oh, of course, Wanamakers. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And so, my sort of vision for Mother's Day. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a mother. I have 3 little kids. My mother is, still alive, which is such a blessing, and still healthy, which is an even greater blessing. And that's a wonderful thing. And I had a great Mother's Day with my kids and my mom, and that's awesome. And I really did enjoy, the cards I received and all those beautiful things. But my vision for Mother's Day, so that it would be more inclusive, which is a word that I know sometimes we hear and we don't like what it means.
Yeah.
But this is a way in which I think we could use the word inclusive to mean something really positive, so that it would be more like St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Right. It would be more like, everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day, whether you're Irish or not. Well, everyone can celebrate motherhood on Mother's Day, whether you're a mother or not.
Yeah.
And I think that was sort of the impetus for my writing the article, was to say, I don't begrudge people opting out of these silly corporate messages, but isn't it sad that that's what our celebration of motherhood has come to, that it's sort of this privatized, commercialized, individual thing, as opposed to something a lot more broad and national and unifying.
Well, I was reading, my pastor in New York, Pastor Tim Keller, passed away on Friday. And I know a lot of people, I'm sure you recognize his name from everything he's done. One of the books I'm rereading is Every Good Endeavor, talking about our work. And as I was reading my devotional and also reading the same chapter, it popped up this morning, it talked about the public service of being the mother, of contributing to the community, the masks that we wear, whether it's planting a garden, whether it's a farmer, whether it is a tradesman, or whether it is the mother who stays at home. And you really, in many ways, I think you bring that out in this article. And
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. That was my goal.
Yeah, no, it really does. It struck me because I was reading your article again this morning, and I was reading that side by side, and I thought, I think we forget. I think we forget what's going on within our hearts, and then what's going on in the chaos of our homes, and then the chaos of this world. And that the mothers out there, the mama bears out there, they are doing a powerful service to our community and to our nation by raising the next generation, as are you. And that is powerful work, as he talks about in Every Good Endeavor. So I just wanted to bring that up, and thank you for citing that. I think that's very powerful. What kind of responses did you get when you posted this article? What was the responses? Was it, those who on the Hill, knowing the Hill is a very political focused audience, what kind of responses did you get when you put this out there?
I mostly got really positive responses. And I think a lot of that's because so many of us are longing for things that unify us. Yes. Whatever our individual ideas, I think a lot of us are longing for things that we can celebrate together. There are fewer and fewer things that bind us as everyone. And even those of us who aren't mothers, right? We had mothers, and we help mothers by doing, whether, as you said yourself, mentoring children, or whether, helping with nieces or nephews or grandchildren, as those other roles in children's lives, and helping mothers, whether you're a teacher, right, who helps a mom by helping to educate her children, or whatever, a nurse, helps deliver babies, whatever the case might be. We all are directly related to the idea of raising the next generation. And so I was happy for the positive response. And I think it reflects that a lot of people are just really looking for those unifying narratives that can bring us together.
Yeah. Another thing that definitely brings us together is the love of literature, the love of reading, and the love of our history and our family history. And I'm going to switch over to the book that you were referring to in Real Clear Books and Culture. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn at 80. I absolutely love the story. And I've already shared it on the stream for those who are following on the social media stream, so they can go pick it up. I do a lot of book features here at Common Sense America. So talk to me about the background of this story, and talk to me about the responses you got through this, and the love of literature, bringing it together, whether it is someone listening to it or somebody reading it or somebody being read to. let's talk about this beautiful story in Brooklyn.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, it was one of my favorite books as a teenager. It really is a story of the power of family, the power of motherhood in many respects.
Uh-huh.
Both the grandmother and the mother in the story are sort of the moral and educational centers. And it's also a story of, America, of the ways in which poor people who came here from other countries were marginalized by some of the corporatism that existed even in that time. And as the cities began to be remade in ways that, made the poor unwelcome in their own communities, as those communities were remade in sort of early versions of creating what the book terms as slums, right? So that they did not have decent places to live. And then it's also the story of grit and triumph. The tree that grows outside the window of Francie's apartment, her tenement apartment in Brooklyn in the 1910s, which is when the story is set. That tree is emblematic of Francie herself, right? It's a representation of her grit, the fact that despite being in conditions that do not lend to growth or to flourishing, she does grow and she does flourish. And although she's not able to attend high school because she needs to work to support her family, she manages to get herself into college. And it's also about, in many ways, the universal bittersweetness of growing up.
Yeah.
Right. It's about the gains, the losses that come with not just her own growth, but her family's growth. Toward the end of the book, her mother gets remarried after her father has sadly passed away, and they're going to be much more financially secure in the new home. And there's tremendous gains that go with that. And there's also losses, right? Because there's the leaving behind of everything she's known and the leaving behind of the way that she's lived. And those are certainly the types of universal human stories that literature is supposed to bring us all together to appreciate.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. When I was reading it, I went back to my childhood and I thought about growing up in Chester County, but I also had the opportunity to grow up in my grandmother's backyard in northern New Jersey. And being so close to New York City, you're constantly surrounded by Jewish families, Eastern European families. All my family's Hungarian. So having that culture and being surrounded by those stories and what they overcame during that time period. My great grandparents followed each other over on the boat, Ellis Island, and one was chasing the other, and they always joked about it. But the mere piece of the importance of the story was they took that step of faith, coming over, starting a family, starting a business that lasted 3 different generations. And so that speaks a lot to, it just reminded me so much of, you talk about that universal peace. It reminded me so much of that and what I learned. I feel as though I'm a better person having grown up around all of those different cultures. And I can't get enough of it, even to this day. When I lived in New York City, I loved going over to the Jewish neighborhoods. I loved going to Brooklyn. I love the Italian aspect. And there was just something so powerful about that foundation of family and that foundation of hope. And I see that as you did that article, that's what I pulled from that article. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. So let's switch again. And I know Anders loves when I do this because I do this with a lot of the different young voices. I just boom, boom, boom. He's like, you go, girl. I was looking at your Twitter account and you have quite a bit of other articles. I saw the Lean In article that you had talked about. I'd love to, we have a few more minutes. I want to grab a couple more minutes with you, the Lean In article, and then also the school choice interview. I was listening to both of them and they both were just filled with goodness. And so I want to do a little bit of a deep dive with you on the Lean In article. And because, I talked about Nikki Haley in the beginning. So let's talk about women in leadership, women of influence, and women at the greatest levels of government, to the mama bears who are at the kitchen table, who are making decisions that are more powerful than the women at the highest levels of government. Let's talk about that. Share with us the background on your article on Lean In.
Sure, thank you. So in 2013, about a decade ago, many of your listeners might remember Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In came out, and it really was written as a response to an article that had run in The Atlantic the year before, which was Anne-Marie Slaughter's Why Women Still Can't Have It All, which had run in 2012 in The Atlantic. And Slaughter was a woman who had always worked full-time, but she had been in academia. And so like myself, she had the kind of flexible schedule that enabled her to both work full-time and be very present with her children. And when she went to work in the State Department under Hillary Clinton, she realized that a normal sort of normative traditional 9 to 5 that was also in, Washington, D.C. when she lives in Princeton, right, would not lend itself to the ability to be present for her children in the way that she was used to and in the way that she wanted to be. And so she wrote this article that talked about how, given the way that work is structured and given the way that the expectations on the nuclear family are, fewer people live around extended family, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right. She wrote an article that explained how few women can, quote unquote, have it all. And she talks very frankly in that piece about how she had kind of always sat in judgment of the women that fell off the competitive professional track to be home with their children, and how she then found herself doing the same thing, right? Stepping back from her position. Now, mind you, she was still in a very competitive, job as a competitive professor at Princeton, but, she found herself stepping back to be more with her children. She was talking about that. Well, Sheryl Sandberg's response was sort of, in many ways a rebuttal that was arguing that there are things that you as a woman, as a mother, can do that will make your life work even as you ascend to the highest ranks of your profession, like being the CEO of Facebook, as Sandberg herself is.
Right.
And, I think that there were a lot of elisions in that book, a lot of things that were left out, a lot of things that were really glossed over and not entirely truthful, right?
Yeah.
For example, one anecdote that Sandberg tells is, well, here's how you can get home by 5:30. And so your family, your kids can eat at 5:30 and be in bed by 7:30, and you can get back to work. And it completely glosses over the fact that for the average working woman, someone has to make the dinner. That's at 5:30. Right?
I mean, she didn't put that in there. No recipes, no nothing, right?
Right. So there's a huge, just obfuscation of how much labor women at the top of these types of very competitive, lucrative fields tend to be purchasing from mostly other women, right? Who are winding up cooking the meals and caring for the children and, doing all the things that their jobs don't enable them to do. And so, I kind of talked about that in relation to today, where there is a little bit more flexibility inherent in the technology.
Yeah.
But also where, most women in every society that has the opportunity for them to do so, not every woman, not all women are the same, but the majority of women are more likely than not to wish to, if finances were no object, step back to spend more time with their children. More than half of women say they would like to work part-time when they have children in the home. And that's something that the Lean In, the book, as well as the sort of culture that came from the book, these Lean In circles that were being run, they sort of did not acknowledge that fundamental reality. And obviously that reality is not true for every single woman. Of course not, right? Women are not a monolith, but in general, that is the reality. And they didn't acknowledge it.
Yeah. I remember when it came out, and I remember where, 10 years ago, gosh, I think I was at Fox Business, and I was up there working. And then I remember I'd met my husband, who's retired Army. And as you're talking about her example, and we forget about the recipes, and I'm guessing she probably had a nanny probably helping with the kids. A lot of us don't have the opportunity to hire a nanny, first and foremost. And the other piece of it is, even for those who are not necessarily parents, I know for myself, my husband's retired, but I too, when I've been asked to come to Washington to work and travel back and forth, that is also something I think about, because my marriage is my top priority. My husband's health is my top priority. And yeah, he's significantly older. That doesn't make the difference. But those things are really things that we still, I think, are still a struggle for a lot of women and their careers. And I am thankful I get to sit here and work most of the time. But then there are the times when I get the call to Washington, get up here. You got to do this stuff. So, I take that time and I think about that, but I think that's a struggle. I think that's still a struggle. Maybe COVID did do something for us in that because, we all realized, and you cited this, we all realized during COVID that we realized what the important things were at that time because we were all home together. We were all like, okay, what do we do now? But we found a way through that to engage with one another and to reintroduce ourselves to one another as a family and as a married couple, or et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm proud of where we have come, but I also, you being a mama bear to 3 kids and what you are doing, how does that make you from a personal standpoint and also professional standpoint in 2023? What does that say to you? And what would you say to all the women out there from the standpoint of, if you are, and the reason why I say this is because I live in a retiree community here in Eastern North Carolina, but I also live in a community that is covered with military spouses, men and women. We have Cherry Point, Seymour Johnson, Camp Lejeune, Fort Bragg. And so the identity of the spouse, and I'll leave it male or female, the identity of the spouse always lends to what the service member is doing. And so the whole lean in perspective, let's just drop that right here. You know what I'm saying? And let's focus in on the reality of their life and the reality of what is ahead for them on their journeys. So all that to say, what are your comments and your thoughts in 2023?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think, Eden, I think technology has really been, as many ways it's a foe, right? That it doesn't help our discourse. But in this way, it is a friend to women, right? The sense that you can do a lot of jobs somewhat remotely, right? The numbers on who's going into the office full time are just, staggering since the pandemic. It's so many fewer people. Yeah. And I think in many ways, there may be losses there of the sort of corporatized communities that a lot of people had come to rely on who were sort of in the Sex and the City demographic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that there's also a lot of pluses to it in the sense that it moves a lot of production back to the home, which of course is what had been traditionally the case. But I do think the biggest, concern and consideration going forward is that women that are not in the laptop class, right? The people that actually work, you're a nurse on a hospital hallway, or you're, in a profession where you actually need to be physically present. I think that at the high end, right, you're going to have people like Sheryl Sandberg or like other women of that level of ambition who are willing to make the sacrifices that they make of family. And you know what? That's okay for them. That's not what I would do. And that's not what most women want to do, but that's okay for them. However, you also have a lot of women that the reason they work so much is because they financially need to. Your average woman working as, in a blue collar, pink collar job is not there because she's looking for her personal fulfillment. Her personal fulfillment's probably coming from motherhood or from elder care or from all the other ways in which she's serving her community, as you mentioned, as a military spouse, for example, right? And so there are a lot of different ways to serve community besides being a mother, but those ways are not necessarily as valued either in policy, right, in terms of the kind of support that we provide, or in the culture in terms of the amount of value that we assign it in a social way, as they could and should be. And while that also impacts a lot of men, there are more stay-at-home fathers, there are more dads doing the brunt of childcare than there used to be, but it affects women more. And I think that's probably always going to be the case. And there's nothing wrong with that. So owning that there's nothing wrong with it, and also trying to create the types of solutions that enable women to have the type of balance that I'm fortunate to be able to have in my life, and it sounds like you're able to have in yours, is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I like what you said, enabling and understanding and realizing that the culture doesn't need to tell you what is the way it should be. You know what the right way it is and what you should be doing, and the influence that you have, whether it's in your military family, whether it's in your community service as a whole, whether it is being a cook in a kitchen or whether a mama bear at the kitchen table. So those are all very powerful pieces of impact. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm really grateful for your stories. What can I look for coming down the pike from you? Because I'm just loving everything that you're writing.
Oh, thank you so much, Eden. I have a review that is coming out in Law and Liberty.
Okay.
Will be out in June or July of Josh Hawley's new book.
Oh,
So I'll be working on that. I'm also working on a review. I have a review coming out of Curtis Sittenfeld's new novel in Real Clear Books and Culture.
Okay.
That should be out this week. And then I have another review coming out in Real Clear Books of Mary Harrington's Feminism Against Progress, which will be out next month.
Okay. We're getting you back for that one. That one and Josh Hawley for sure. I cannot wait. Anders, all right, mark her down. I want her back. So Elizabeth Grace Matthew, a Philadelphia-based writer, editor. She writes about education, culture, politics, and religion. And you can see at the very bottom her website, which is absolutely great. I love your website and how you have it set up. And that's been going across the screen the whole time. So for such a time as this, thank you so much, Elizabeth. Many blessings to you. Look forward to maybe seeing you when I'm back in Chester County. And I'd love to meet you. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Eden. God bless you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye. For all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I tell you what, they just keep getting better and better and better. And thank you guys. Thank you, Young Voices. Thank you, Anders. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your amazing contributions to Common Sense America. We are honored to just have you here and honored to talk about the important issues that face our culture, that face our faith and our country. So we're going to take a brief, quick break, and we'll be right back. And then we're going to air an interview I did a couple of weeks ago with a very powerful book author talking about the Parents' Battle Plan. She is a faith-based author. She's being featured at NRB this week in Orlando, Florida. She has also been all over CBN and Fox News and podcasts and you name it. So we're going to re-air that episode with Lane Craft. We will be right back. And we are back here, Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. If you have not yet done so, share with your friends. Join us at Common Sense America with Eden Hill on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And this morning, I'm going to do another episode with our best-selling author, Lane Lawson Craft. And you guys, she's just top-notch. We have about 20 minutes left in the show. I'm going to air this morning an episode we did just a couple weeks back. It is just too important not to air this episode. So without further ado, welcome. And here is Lane Lawson Craft. You have right now, I'm going to put this across the screen, your new book, The Parents' Battle Plan.
Yes.
And is that correct? Okay. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about this coming out, the inspiration behind it. And full disclosure, my husband and I got married later in life, so we have no babies, but we mentor teens, we mentor young kids, and it's very important to us. So I feel like it still maybe apply to us.
Well, it's huge, Eden. That's a huge point because there are grandparents raising children today. We got aunts and uncles and loved ones like you that feel like they want to pour into this next generation. Mm-hmm. So we're all in this together. So yes. The biggest thing I want everyone to understand is that we're not in war with these children. Mm-hmm. We're not in war with these teens that are defiant or lost or just confused. We're in war with this dark world, with the whole problem began with the family. You know, that's the anchor of our country. It's
Yes.
our family.
Yes.
And so that is the passion. My 3 children were prodigal. I was at the pinnacle of what I thought God created me to be. I was sharing wonderful stories of hope from big stars like Dolly Parton, Kathy Lee Gifford, Reba McEntire. They would come into this magazine that I circulated nationally in every bookstore in America and Canada. They would share where faith mattered. And it was important because they were, they were well known. And so here I was doing that, Eden, and my own 3 teens and young adults were in a huge battle, and I never knew how dark it was.
So let's take a step back for a second. You have been in this space for such a long period of time. I was looking at your website. I mean, you've been endorsed by Candace Cameron and Roma Downey, and you're so very well known in your craft and the work that you are doing. But as I sit here, and I say this, as I sit here and having served in public policy, seeing what is happening in our nation's backyard. And also this show was built on the fact that I had ran for state house and I exposed corruption and I exposed conversations that happen at a kitchen table. I talk about that all the time. The kitchen table discussions we have are more powerful than any presidential speech. We make those decisions to impact our families, and it's just what you said, and the next generation. So rewind with me for a second and tell me about, even before these books, tell me about really how God brought you to this point as being the author, as being the speaker, and really speaking into parents and speaking into teens. What really got you there?
Well, I would have to go back to about 20 plus years ago. I had an advertising agency. My husband and I are both entrepreneurs. From the time we graduated from college, we basically have worked for ourselves. So we believe that God has written every check, every insurance premium. But about 17 years in our marriage, Eden, we fell apart. We were in a dead marriage, and we were late 30s, and we both were pretty successful in what we were doing, and we both said, you know what? Yes, we're living on opposite ends of the house and such, but we got these 3 kids, and so what we did, we fell to our knees. We were in a religious mindset at that point. We were doing, what everybody else does, goes to church, but we really did not have a personal relationship, and so we fell to our knees, and we said, God, if you're real, please come in and help us start again from scratch. And so this 17-year marriage, Eden, it was resurrected. And from that point forward, and like I said, that was 20 plus years ago, we fell in love again. We dated again. But the reason I speak about this is that was the anchor. That was our first real experience with God in our late 30s, that we knew he was real. So when these kids of ours that were teens were making self-destructive choices and being lured in from the deception and horribleness of the world, that was the anchor that helped us believe that God would turn it around in his perfect time. So,
what are some of the things to the parents who are tuning in? I have a lot of mama bears that tune into the show, whether it's live or after the show. And I always want to give them tips that they can look for in their child or in their teenager or their preteen, as it pertains to the fact, and I was going to hold up my cell phone. I have my thing up, but I feel as though, and I see it, that the cell phones are really dictating the family.
Yes. And I say the most important thing a parent, grandparent, loved one can hear today, our children are one click away from self-destruction, from death. And that's why this is urgent. This is why I penned this book. Because when I looked back, Eden, I wanted to give parents, like you said, tips, revelations that if I had known in the battle what I could have done, really the most important thing I want you to know, though, we just got to partner with God first. That's the biggest thing. Because listen, here I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing. It's just that the world is evil. So again, don't walk around saying, what have I done wrong? Don't walk around with shame and guilt, because listen, you just need the right weapons. Amen.
Amen. Oh, you said it. I love how you always bring it right back to the perspective, because this morning I was up at 4 a.m. and I had so much on my mind. We are moving next week and I had just 10, my list is, how long those lists can be. And I was like, you know what? Dr. Stanley always says, come on your knees. So that's what I did, because I usually just sit there and read my scripture. And so I want to encourage people to get on their knees if they physically can, to really start that day off with getting on their knees and really humbly coming before the Lord in prayer, like you and your husband did 17 years into your marriage. So let's talk about some of the triggers that we see as we put these before the Lord and are raising kids or being the godparents to kids. What are triggers that we need to be aware of that, we are busy, working, make sure we put food on the table, getting gas in the cars. But what are the triggers we need to be looking at in kids who may not necessarily want to tell their parents, but then they tell us? What are things that we need to be aware of?
Right. Well, I would just really challenge everyone today, starting today, because I believe we together can make a shift today for anybody that's in battle with their teen or young adult or adult. The first thing I would say is communication. I know we hear that, but how do we really do that? Well, it's exactly what you said. Slow down. Make it intentional, just sometime in the day. Listen, we were entrepreneurs running 2 companies on our own. I mean, we had 3 kids in 3 years. We know it's hard. I mean, that's what I want to tell you. It is hard. Parenting today is, I think, at the worst it's ever been, because there's just so many things pulling at our children. But first of all, just in the morning, maybe just that first bit, just say, hey, good morning, I love you. Man, just hearing I love you to a kid, even though it seems foreign, sometimes you don't want to say it because you're really mad at them. Just let them know you love them, because you know what we do, right? And
Yes.
that can carry them through the whole day. And at the end of the day, just be intentional. How are you today? Not just how are you, because that can get too just general. How are
Right.
you today? How was today for you? That can open up so much.
I was looking at your book. I love your book. I love the book cover, and I can't wait I was thinking for Mother's Day, we are headed right into Mother's Day. What a great gift this would be for mothers. And I also think we live in a huge military community. I'm a veteran spouse, but we live by our Marine Corps bases here and our Army bases and our Air Force bases. What a great gift it would be for our military spouses who are going nonstop in a hurry up and wait mentality. This would be so ideal for them. One example I have is a military spouse transitioning, moving, and newborn. What do you say to the mothers of newborns as they are first-time parents, first-time mama bears? What do you say, and what can they pull from this new book towards that audience?
Right. I wished when I began having children, somebody would have said to me, you know what, the best thing you can do for your child, even in your tummy, is start praying. Start praying. So I like to say, Eden, if you're not praying for your child, who is? So as
Right.
mothers and daddies and as godparents, aunts and uncles, if we just start covering them in prayer, and it seems simple, doesn't it? It seems like,
Yes.
oh yeah, but let me tell you something. I'm a believer through my 3 experiences that those prayers, when they were needed, were enacted in the heavens. And so just begin to pray. Father, thank you for this child. You, Father, are the father of me and this child. You've trusted me with this child. You formed this child in my womb. And,
Yes.
I want to say something else that is really revelatory. God
Yes.
was the first prodigal father. He
Yes.
had Adam and Eve, and he said, hey, I'm going to give you food, water. I've got a beautiful place. It's a garden that you can live in. Just don't do this one thing. And what did they do?
They did the one thing.
God knows what it feels like when your kid tells you a lie, or you've told them, don't do that anymore. It's going to hurt you. And they do. So I think that's important to understand also, that God relates, and every tear is collected. It says in the scripture, every tear we cry to God is collected in a bottle. So
Yes.
back to prayer. If you are expecting a baby or you've got a new baby, start that intentional living with prayer today. And just say, Father, give them your wisdom, because with your wisdom, they can make right choices. And then protection, because we do have an enemy out there. In the book, I go into detail. That's important to know. We're not in war again with our kids. We're in war with this lure of this darkness, of these drugs, of these confusion of what these children, hey, they're trying to usurp our authority.
Yes, they are. They are. They are. Are you in the great state of Florida by chance?
I am, and I'm so sorry that I'm a little dark. It's because the great sunny Florida sun is coming through this window. So, yes, but I am in the free state of Florida. Amen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because there's a lot of mama bears down there trying to take back the parental rights. And I know this wasn't planned for political, but I know a lot of mama bears down there who are looking out for the children and what they are being taught and should be taught and not being taught. And so you just said it, and taking away the rights. So we've got to, as mama bears, as godparents, as grandparents, stand up for that across the nation, not just in the Freedom State of Florida, but here in North Carolina, all the way up to the north. And you heard that mama bear on earlier, and that is definitely needed up there. For sure. So let me ask you really quickly, we have just a few minutes left. Talk to me about the outline of your book. Is it a study book as well? Does it come with study tools, or is it, how do you have it laid out for the, because I saw a couple bundles on there and I wanted to kind of walk through that.
Well, the most important thing is at the end of every chapter, I go, what can you do today?
Yeah.
Because I believe you can do something starting today. So at the end of every chapter, I offer questions, a scripture, and a prayer. Secondly, my dream and vision for this book is to become a small group all around the country.
Oh, that's
fabulous. Parenting. And it would be small groups where moms and dads can come in with like-minded people and say, okay, we got to pray for mine. Or, hey, I'm in this fight. Can y'all give me tips? It's a small group community, similar to Celebrate Recovery. We hope that we can see those throughout the country, because you know what? This is a war that we need to join arms with, put together this, just battle plan together. So they get these directives at the end of every chapter. And, the most important part of this is real life stuff. I lived it. These are principles and tips and revelations that I know will help anyone that is watching a child make some wrong choices, maybe have mental illness or depressed. This book can help enact freedom and healing. It really can.
Well, I was going to ask you about the mental health and depression piece, because that seems to be at the very forefront of this next generation. It seems as though instead of them having excitement and hope for their college education or their trade school, on all their opportunities of life's journey, they're now dealing with this ongoing mental health battle, this ongoing comparison battle, this ongoing digital battle of, well, I don't meet up, so I'm going to commit suicide, So, can you talk a little bit to that? Does it focus in on that in the book as well?
Yes, it does. And I actually have a chapter in there, Eden, that's called When the Worst Happens, because now we've got this fentanyl poisoning. We've got them trying to kill listen, if we were in war, we would have already blown up these people, because see, that's how many kids have died. Good kids, innocent kids. They were just doing what everybody else was, but they didn't know just a small grain of salt or sand was in that pill that killed them. So think of it in that term. So, but back to the depression and suicide, listen, that's where we go back to, how are you today? You seem sad. Is there something going on? Just opening up that conversation. I know so many of you are scared to say, are you sad, or is everything okay? Because you really don't know what to do with it. But I promise you, if they're sad, if they're feeling, like you said, comparison, that was, my daughter had some, really mean friends in her life that really brought her to a place where she thought maybe life would be better without her. So I get it. So that just one question, think about that, even that one question. How is your day to day? Hey, are you sad today? Is anything going on in your life that you have nobody else to talk to? I'm here. I love you. Just planting these seeds, because we have the #1 highest rate of suicides and death in these teenagers than we've ever seen.
Oh my goodness. I sit here and think about, I know the high suicide numbers are for our veterans, but now it's our veterans and our teenagers. And that's just so hard to wrap your brain around from a spiritual perspective.
Yeah.
Do you think the church is kind of stuck where we're not seeing from church leaders what we should be seeing from church leaders, and where your book could actually help church leaders rise up families, father leaders, mother leaders once again?
You hit my passion. Listen,
Mhm.
we've got to do this. We have got to equip and empower the parents and the people that love these children. We can't stick our heads in the sand any longer. I mean, we have got to rise up and talk about drugs, suicide, depression. So yes, this book, I would love to come to any church and come in and just say, bring all the parents in the community, not just ones in your church. Let's join together. This would be a great way to bring people into your community that have never walked in the door and equip them and empower them to see there are some principles that we can do that truly will bring deliverance or education.
Yes.
We've got to educate.
Yes.
This just avoiding it and not acknowledging
Not
from the
doing
pulpit. It's not. It is absolutely keeping the fire literally burning.
And for all of those who are tuning in, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your support of the show. I've been receiving comments throughout the show. And also I messaged Lane Lawson Craft. She is at NRB right now this week and doing her podcast and talking about her amazing book, The Parents Battle Plan. If you have not done so, yes, this was filmed right before Mother's Day. This book is so relevant to our culture today. Please go consider ordering the book on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and pick it up. And also, she is very available for comments. And like you heard her say, she would love to come speak to any church, to any women's group, to any leadership group about the parents and your battle plan to help the next generation. So Lane, thank you so much for your friendship. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you what you are doing. We are honored to know you here at Common Sense America. So a show note, get ready tomorrow. We have a very, very special episode with Vietnam veterans who are joining the show as we prepare for Memorial Day, as we prepare for the summer patriotic holidays, which this nation still believes in. Apple pie, July 4th parades, all very important. We're going to be talking with two of these Vietnam veterans, talking about their service, talking about what they have done for this nation, and talking about our nation's defense now. So as we head into the Memorial Day holiday, please tune in tomorrow. We will have a very special episode. And then Thursday, you haven't seen her in a hot minute, but she's around. Melanie Colette, my Jersey girl, she's going to be joining us on Thursday. She hasn't been on the show, I don't think, since CPAC. And she's going to be talking about her candidacy and a lot of the issues that are happening in Jersey and the Northeast and the GOP women's groups. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going down. So we're going to be talking with her. And then also bringing back to the show, Victoria Churchill, American Liberty News. She's going to be talking about, we're going to talk all things Beltway, all things politics, and what is ahead for this great nation as we head into 2024. So 2 minutes left to spare. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Be strong, be courageous. Get to work. I'll see you then.